Hey, Dr. Jon Finn here. Welcome to the Habit Mechanic podcast. Right now, you can get my new best-selling book, Train Your Brain for the AI Revolution, at tougherminds.co.uk. The digital book, audiobook, and physical book are all available at a special price that you won't find anywhere else.
This is the second of our regular Tougher Minds podcasts, in which we chronicle all aspects of Tougher Minds' work in education and business. We're joined once again by Tougher Minds founder, Dr. Jon Finn, and Jon was speaking the day after another successful event for Tougher Minds in central London. It was the Improve Exam Success event at UCL Institute of Education in the Bloomsbury area last night. 2 sessions, plenty of people at both sessions, and tell us about it. How did it go?
Really well, thanks, Andrew. Yeah, so we had an event, Improve Exam Success, which was pitched at anybody who's trying to manage the challenge of exams, whether it's professional exams at work, all the way down to entrance exams and 11 plus exams, or those people who are sitting GCSEs, A-levels and degree exams. And we had a whole range of people, lots of families there who were upskilling the family, if you like, because they recognise that exams can be quite stressful when parents are taking them or when the pupils are taking them, and having a set of common skills that they can use as a family to deal with the challenge of exams. I think it's proving a very popular idea, and those families don't seem to be able to get that insight anywhere else, which is interesting. So yeah, I think a lot of very happy people last night leaving UCL. Some of them leaving quite late, and they were committed to come into a session which started at 8 and didn't actually get away till about 9:30. So yeah, very, very good, very positive.
Excellent, and I mean, no doubt a good representation of people from different schools. Fair to say it was a mixed audience, state schools and private schools as well, represented by parents and families?
Yeah, we had a complete continuum from pupils coming by themselves. So there were some little groups of pupils who'd come by themselves. And that was really interesting to see just how much they were writing down without a teacher or an adult kind of monitoring them. There were families who'd come as a unit. Sometimes, brother was doing his GCSEs and sister was maybe in year 7 and just kind of preparing. There were families whose kids weren't necessarily doing GCSEs that year or exams that year. They were sort of kids in year 8, year 9, but they were sort of looking up and thinking about the challenge. There were parents who'd just come by themselves because their children couldn't come with them, so they were going to take some of that information back. There were some parents who'd come because they were sitting exams themselves, but equally their children had exams. And there were some teachers there as well, some who brought some pupils with them from schools, but some who just kind of come by themselves just to take some information back to their form classes and their tutor groups who were sort of had imminent exams. So yeah, it was really a real range of people, which was what the event was designed to do. So it was great that we got that range.
Yeah, and I know this was the second in a series of events you staged at the Institute of Education before and after Easter. Is it worth people keeping an eye on the Tougher Minds website for news of any similar or related type events?
Yeah, I think we're going to do more of those events. Nothing in the immediate future, but certainly we think there's an appetite for that. And I think exams are stressful times, aren't they? And at school, when you learn, when you are preparing for exams, often it's very much about individual subject preparation. We're not really preparing young people to be able to stand back and think about all their subjects and managing and juggling all those different things that are going on for them. So we see there's a need for it. So I think something we'll certainly do again in the future.
Great. Well, it's tougherminds.co.uk for anybody who does want to keep an eye on the website. And if you go to the website, there's plenty of opportunities to sign up and register for the latest news and information and alerts from Tougher Minds about forthcoming events, etc. So well worth doing that. It's also worth keeping an eye on Tougher Minds on Twitter at Tougher Minds as well. So do that, and certainly you have the best chance of not missing out on any announcements relating to new events. Well, Jon, this week on the podcast, I thought we could talk about something that seems to be a component of every Tougher Minds program you deliver, be it a bite-size course or one of the more long-form programs. And it was something that came into my mind because I was watching a series on BBC One recently called How to Stay Young, presented by the veteran former newsreader Angela Rippon, who's probably better known to some people of a certain vintage, but nevertheless is a well-respected broadcaster. And she's been, along with a doctor whose name I can't remember, but nevertheless, they've been looking at various societies and cultures around the world and their approaches to staying young, as well as some of the latest scientific thinking about staying young and healthy. And certainly one thing that really resonated, or three things, should I say, that resonated was in the second program, they focused very much on sleep, diet and exercise. And they came at it, of course, from a point of view of how that could keep you young. But I'm aware those big three, if you like, are central components of the Tougher Minds program. I just wondered if we could discuss in what ways those three really do have a beneficial effect. I mean, for a start off, for diet, in the program How to Stay Young, I think Okinawa, the island near Japan, is recognised as having the best longevity in the modern world. And the program attributed that in no small part to a rather weird-looking purple form of sweet potato that the Okinawans eat. Before everyone rushes out to the shops, you can't get it over here apparently, but nevertheless, I think blueberries are probably the next best alternative according to the program. That's slightly a light-hearted aside, but they were talking about diet being a focus, as I say, for longevity. But in what way is diet an important component of personal performance and optimizing your personal performance?
Well, hugely, and we're understanding this more and more all the time. I think the neuroscientific ways of measuring dietary impact, I think, have been quite powerful. Things like functional MRI scanners. There's certainly a gut-to-brain connection. There seems to be an influence between the state and the healthiness of your gut bacteria, and actually your brain's ability to learn and hardwire and myelinate new information. There's more data concerning that coming out all the time. I think there was quite a significant study came out of University College Dublin a few weeks ago, which seemed to extend this understanding even further. But I think that if we're thinking about optimal performance, learning and stress are often key components here. And there is a site in your brain, which we call the hippocampus or the hippocampi, because we have, and your brain's like kind of a mirror. There's two regions which mirror each other. And the hippocampus is central for both stress and for learning. And what you eat seems to have quite a significant impact on your hippocampus structure. Now, the hippocampus is central for learning and stress managing because it's a site in the brain, the significant site in the human brain that produces new brain cells. So it's really wired into memory and learning. And equally, if you want to get good at managing stress, having lots of new brain cells is important because it helps you to think flexibly around challenging situations. And if you don't have new brain cells, you can kind of get stuck in a rut of thinking and not being able to reframe difficult situations. And it looks like, for example, if healthy males, they have, let's say they have a week where they just eat junk, as we know, junk food, as we call, junk food, high sugary, high fatty, high salty food. The hippocampi actually shrink; they get smaller.
Wow.
So there seems to be this very strong correlation between dietary intake and brain function, in particular connected to the hippocampi. So yeah, more understanding about this coming out all the time. So the common sense idea that having a balanced, healthy diet is important, we can really extend that now in terms of specifically talking about, well, actually, if you don't have a healthy, balanced diet, then it's going to impact on not only your ability to learn new things, which is a huge component of most humans' lives, but also your ability to deal with stress, which is also a huge component of young people's lives. Especially when we're looking at teenagers, where we're seeing an explosion of mental illness, and also at a time in their lives when they're expected to learn lots of new things at school, then diet is absolutely central. And I'm not sure in the Western world we're getting diet particularly right at the moment.
No, there's certainly a myriad of theories and advice, 5-2 fasting, low carb, paleo, you name it. But so your broad message seems to be natural, unrefined food as much as possible, balanced diet will serve you well for optimizing your mental performance. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think the data is very clear about what isn't good for humans, and governments are becoming more aware of this. Through work like Professor Jim McKenna, who works with Tougher Minds, is a big player in that field. And it was interesting to see, I think, the company that make Dolmio sauce coming out this week saying, actually, you shouldn't eat our food that much, maybe once a week. And interesting to see, actually, in central London yesterday, a huge crowd of young children/teenagers who'd been given free Dolmio pasta pots down by Charing Cross Station. So obviously Dolmio going into the field and getting their food back out there again. But we know that as humans we're designed to get. We want high calorific food. We want food which is rich in calories, because we've been evolving for maybe up to 200,000 years, and there hasn't always been a Tesco's on the corner, or a fridge in the house full of food. So we're designed to get as much calories on board as possible, which means high sugar, high fat, high salt. But now food is so readily available, we can find ourselves eating too much of that kind of high fat, high sugar, high salt food, and it seems like the sugar is quite dangerous for us.
Yeah, well, as you say, it's an area where there is a lot of ongoing research, and I know Tougher Minds distills that research into its programs to give people the best possible advice, and I'm sure they'll continue to do that. Certainly, the areas you talked about were reflected also in the BBC programme, and it is fascinating. They too were talking about how the hippocampi in the Okinawan race was in a very healthy state because of their diet, or so a particular piece of research had pointed out. So very clear connection there. The second then of this triumvirate that, as I say, is a central part of all Tougher Minds programs is exercise. And there was a thought or an idea expressed within the program that if you not just exercise, certainly movement was beneficial, and walking was seen as having a great positive impact on cognitive function, I think they said. And also another significant factor was if you played a new sport or learnt a new sport, that new skill acquisition process was also beneficial. And I understand that understanding is also in Tougher Minds' advice about using exercise to optimize your performance also.
Yeah, again, John Medina the molecular biologist from America, who's very large in the field of neuroscience and education. He will say brain rule number one: exercise boosts brain power. So the data is very compelling that when we move around, and the thinking is that humans anthropologically are designed to move around 12k a day, and that's walking. So walking around 12k a day. And actually, what we seem to be designed to do is to move around and solve problems. So that seems to be a real strong part of our evolution, and that makes a lot of sense. So when we move around, we release a brain protein called BDNF, and that is described as being like fertilizer for brain cells. So it helps your brain to learn things faster, gives you that potential. So exercise seems to be absolutely, and again, when I say exercise, we mean walking around is exercise. You don't have to go to the gym, and there's actually enough research out there now that can give you an indication of exactly which type of exercise has which kind of impact on brain function. So weightlifting might have a different type of impact on brain function to walking, for example. But exercise, when we say we're starting with walking around. And yeah, it seems logical as well to an extent. I think a big bugbear that I find annoying is that when young people are revising for exams, their breaks constitute, sitting down and watching Geordie Shore or Made in Chelsea or something for an hour.
Yeah.
Actually, they would get much more benefit if they had active breaks. So I've seen this as a revolutionary idea for lots of young girls in particular who find themselves getting particularly conscious about doing the best that they can do in their exams, and that can lead to stress, and actually finding that if they have active breaks, it just makes their life so much easier. It helps them to manage the stress in the moment and get back to their study area, their desk, in a much better state of mind. So the data is very clear there, and it's not only very clear in what the scientific papers are showing us. We see this every day in our programs. We see the pupils benefiting from it. We see their parents benefiting from it. I think in one of our family resilience programs recently, a CEO of quite a big London business was reporting how he changed his exercise habits, and now he was running up the stairs in his company building a couple of times a day just to reset himself instead of sitting down and having a cup of coffee. So it's these simple and practical ideas that you need to take away from that very good lab-based, social science-based research and actually put into your life so you can make a positive difference.
Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating how the program as bore out exactly what you said about the boosting of the brain power through exercise, and it's I suppose interesting to see how some societies, perhaps slightly arbitrarily, have evolved to have those kind of habits ingrained in them and others haven't. That's possibly a broader debate for another day. Then the third one, of course, is sleep, and I've left this deliberately last because certainly the BBC programme How to Stay Young made significant play of that being a very, very important factor in performance and or aging, or counteracting aging, as they were saying. And for you, perhaps agree that is the most powerful of all. Maybe that's not a worthwhile consideration to have, but certainly massively significant. Would you say?
I think you could make an argument it's the most powerful component, because we know that if we don't sleep particularly well, eating well and making ourselves do exercise becomes more challenging. So I think you can make that argument. Building new habits is fueled by, in the first instance, willpower, resisting the temptation to drive to work, or to stay on the tube all the way into, you know, the destination, or to get mum to drop you off right at the school gates. You know, building good diet habits is about resisting the temptation to have a cake when you go to Costa Coffee in the morning, you know, instead of a piece of fruit, or having a bacon sandwich instead of a banana. So, and if we haven't slept very well, it makes those things more challenging. I think that's one of the impacts of alcohol has on people. It's that because it is so disruptive for sleep patterns, it makes life the next day more difficult, and you end up doing, you know, unhelpful things in relation to your diet and your exercise. My understanding of sleep then is that it has two broad functions in relation to performance. I'm not really an expert on the aging side of things, but in relation to performance, one of the core functions is that it helps you to boost learning. That's a twofold idea. One is when you sleep, you consolidate what you learned that day. So your brain kind of makes sense of it and stores it away, if you want to think of it like that. And then the other side of the learning is that, you know, if you have a good night's sleep, you're fresher in the morning and you can get back to learning the thing that you want to learn again. Secondly, it seems to have impact on reducing stress. The explicit understanding of that, it's probably to do with resetting, clearing out the unhelpful chemicals from your brain that might, you know, lead to things like anxiety and that kind of thing. So I think sleep has this sort of cleaning function for humans, and if we don't get enough of it, it not only impacts on our short-term performance, in the long term, it seems to negatively impact on our on the kind of cognitive diseases we're seeing creep more and more into the 21st century society, like dementia, Alzheimer's, that kind of stuff. There seems to be some connections, some preliminary connections being made between sleep deprivation and those challenging illnesses that we're seeing more and more people suffering from as we live longer.
Well, that is the connection actually the program made in you know, when considering the issue of aging. So actually, I think it's a very similar insight you're outlining there, and they spoke. I think as part of that, again, I think they talked about an effect being, you could observe the effect of sleep deprivation again on the hippocampus. Would I be right in recalling that?
Yes, there's the hippocampus. If there's a maintenance team that looks after the hippocampus, the key players in that maintenance team are sleep, diet, and exercise for sure. And that's why, you know, the hippocampus isn't accidentally right at the centre of your brain. It's very important for us. I think the learning, producing new brain cells and learning makes a lot of sense. It's a bit more complicated to understand the idea that new brain cells are also very important for managing stress. And it seems to be that if brain conditions aren't correct, so the acidity levels, which is probably the wrong language to use, but the chemical makeup of your brain isn't at the correct level, new brain cells will not come out of the hippocampi. They will stay where they are. So the idea of using sleep as a mechanism to clear out the nasty chemicals in your brain makes a lot of sense. So yeah, they're all absolutely central. And you know, I think the kind of program you saw this week or the last week, they wouldn't have been able to make 5 years ago, because the insights we're getting, you know, from the neuroscience, and a lot of it's neuroscience is confirmatory. It's confirming what we thought we understood, but actually it's doing more than that. It's giving us explicit detail as to why these things are so important. And I think everybody would agree, any sensible person would agree, yes, sleep, diet and exercise are really important. But the reality is, in the Western world, we're just not getting these things right. We're sleep deprived, we're eating the wrong kinds of food, we've got type 2 diabetes going through the roof, we're more sedentary than ever. So although, as Professor Jim McKenna would say, you know, these ideas are common sense, they're not common practice. And people have not built good sleep, diet, and exercise habits in the 21st century, and they're so central to us being happy, healthy, and high performing.
Yeah, well, I think if people do want to see the program again, certainly I think the insight you've just given us, Jon, in the last 25 minutes or so has been fantastic and even more detailed, actually, than that available in the program. So people could advance their learning, I'm sure, by listening to that and their understanding. But the program's still available, I would imagine, for a couple of weeks on BBC iPlayer. How to Stay Young. There's 2 parts to it, as I say, presented by Angela Rippon. So I'm sure people might want to check that out. And just finally, then, to wrap up, Jon, I said earlier that sleep, diet, and exercise are, I think, ubiquitous parts of any Tougher Minds program that you deliver. Just give us a brief insight into how you deliver those messages and how you help educate people about how to apply the good practice in those areas.
Well, first of all, we need to educate them about the importance of those 3 things. A bit like we've been talking about on this podcast. And then secondly, it's giving them some simple and practical ways to build better habits in those areas. So we use our performance planners. They're quite central to that. And there's a particular area in the performance planner which allows people to self-watch their sleep, diet, and exercise, and also to build some new habits around sleep, diet, and exercise. So we give them a simple and practical way to do that. And where that's most successful is where mum, dad, kids, everybody at home is getting involved and doing this. So it's something you can do together as a family in the morning, and then you can reflect on it again in the evening. So yeah, that's the performance planner really, which we always bespoke for different groups of people that we work with. But that's where we, that's the vehicle, I guess, we use on a daily basis to help people to manage this more effectively.
And I suppose maybe worth pointing out to people an overarching principle of that is that's something to help you change your behaviour, and you can't change your behaviour unless you monitor and identify what's happening at the moment before you make the change.
Yeah, so you've got to be we call it self-watching. You've got to be self-aware of where your sleep, diet, and exercise are right now if you're going to change them, And the thing with habits is that they're not very conscious to us. They're very subconscious. It's just what we do, and it's aware that it's just our automated behaviour. We've got bad sleep pattern, or we just eat what we eat, or we exercise how we exercise.
I suppose that the adjective habitual almost, it can be taken to mean that you're perhaps talking about a habit in a more technical sense of observing behaviour, but people say, it's habitual, and they mean subconscious, I guess.
Yeah, it's just what I do, but you can change what you do. That's very clear. Otherwise, I won't have a job. You can change what people do, and that's the problem with a lot of the certainly the exercise and diet type interventions. They're just not sustainable. So fasting for a day isn't sustainable for most people. You can't tolerate it, so it's not a realistic habit. I think there's an exercise one which is kind of do 10 minutes of exercise, but at an intensity where it's highly painful for 10 minutes. So it's 10 minutes a day. You get as much benefit from us doing that as if you did 10 hours a day. However, people can't do that level of intensity, so it's not a sustainable habit. So we're trying to give people simple and practical things that they can do, which are sustainable. And what that means is you can't. Change is going to take time. Substantial change. It's one small step at a time. So we've got to be realistic if we're going to engage in sustainable personal change management. Well,
Jon, that's great. Thanks for your time. Fascinating as always. Don't forget, if you want more information about Tougher Minds, you can check out the website at tougherminds.co.uk. There are resources to download, and you can also follow us on Twitter at Tougher Minds. Thanks for listening to this podcast, and listen out for the next one coming soon.
Thanks for listening to the Habit Mechanic podcast. If you liked it, please subscribe and tell someone else about one of the ideas or insights that you found most interesting.